Ignatius J. Reilly is a chaotic hero. I think I'm not the first person to ever say that, and I certainly won't be the last. But he's also not the primary character of a Confederacy of Dunces. Every character in this book is a weirdo, and I was talking to our mutual friend Chris Sandbatch, who actually hates this book, and he's from New Orleans, and I was telling him I thought that the city of New Orleans takes weirdos, it attracts weirdos, and then Flanderizes them, and I think that's what you get with Ignatius. He gets worse throughout the book, so much so, and we're gonna dive into spoilers. As much as I hate like spoiler culture, just the idea of like saying spoilers, I'm gonna say that every episode of this podcast. But Ignatius is going to be about to be committed by his mother because he's just too much to deal with, and then he escapes to New York with his kind of girlfriend Myrna Minkoff, who we'll get to. So yeah, I think New Orleans is a city of weirdos that it's like a crab in a bucket mentality. And I think, well, let me get your thoughts on that, Dan.
I mean, so I am not super familiar with New Orleans. I've only been there in my early 20s and I was mostly drunk. So I can't really speak to that. But I do think, to the extent that one can embody the kind of dialect and, ethos of a region of the country, it certainly, if I don't have the knowledge to say whether it is faithful, and I guess I don't, it certainly is convincing. And it he describes the he gets into not only, so just to set for the listeners, if you don't know Ignatius is kind of like a 1960s version of a NEET. He is a 30-year-old overweight man who has a master's degree, who is unemployed, living with his mother, who is overbearing, and he is a reactionary of a sort of muddled politics. He seems to, favor some sort of monarchical integralist society, and he is coexisting in 1960s New Orleans with the the or not even proto, the kind of like blooming, so to say, civil rights movement and whatnot, and the kind of the characters of the day in New Orleans. So there is also a African American worker in a bar who figures into the plot. There is a sort of body shop, bar manager named Lana Lee. There is the manager of a shoe factory or a pants factory that Ignatius works at, which is called the Levi Pants Factory. So it's Mr. Levi.
No relation to Levi Strauss, by the way.
Exactly. And his wife is a sort of overbearing woman of a particular, she's like a proto awful, and one of the best, aspects of Confederacy of Dunces is the fact that this novel is so prescient. So one of the perfect, encapsulations or crystallizations of that is that the wife of this owner of the pants factory, this kind of like wealthy, awful. And so for, our readers, if you don't know what that is, that's affluent, white,
female liberal.
There we go. She has a kind of social justice mission to enhance the life of this elderly single female employee, whose name I forget at the moment.
Miss Trixie,
who is, totally not only, I mean, maybe she was once competent, she is no longer competent. Her husband, Mr. Levy, wants to fire her, but the wife won't let him. And so, and crucially, she herself wants to quit, but she is not being allowed to quit. So it's this kind of dynamic where you have this woman who's a proto-awful, who is, exhibiting all the characteristics of attempting to make progressive social change while actually making everything worse. And there's so many other examples of this in the novel, where Toole not only digs into the specifics of New Orleans society in that day, at least as far as I can tell. I was not alive in the 60s, and New Orleans is not a place I'm particularly familiar with. But it's also, I can say with confidence, a very prescient novel. So much so that, reading it, you kind of realize that the issues we're talking about today are issues that people have been talking about for a very long time.
I think that's very well said.
Mm.
I want to move, because there's a lot to this novel. Centrally, Ignatius. I mean, if there were no Ignatius, one, the plot wouldn't work, but I also think that it'd be a lesser work. There haven't been many characters like Ignatius Reilly, except for,
Absolutely.
I mean, he is a modern day Don Quixote, as I alluded to before, and as many have alluded to. And
Absolutely.
Ignatius, throughout the novel, he's guided by Fortuna. Like he's guided by the, basically, fate, let's call it.
Yeah.
He's often he's often just saying, Fortuna, Jesus, you have the wheel, right?
Yes.
And after I finished reading it, and you see Ignatius, he's in the car with Myrna. He just sees the asylum ambulance that was coming to pick him up to commit him, right?
Mm.
Drives past, right? And he kind of he pulls kind of a move on Myrna, a weird move. He sniffs her hair, right?
Yeah.
Right. But this is, totally outside his realm. And I bring this back to my theory about the city, but I think Fortuna has a degree to do with it as well. All of these things were keeping him, we're dragging him down into this absurdity, and as he leaves the city, like, he kind of turns into, like, a regular guy. Have you ever you saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so the kid, I think his name is Billy, right? Who's committed,
Yeah.
and then he has sex with the girl, and suddenly he's like just a regular guy for like 5 minutes.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of see Ignatius as. He's and Myrna, in one of their letters, because one of the things about this book is half of it is just written correspondence between Ignatius and Myrna, and their whole their differing personalities, but they're both also trying to impress one another. It's like snail mail flirting.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's kind of like, like one of our guys and an e-girl almost.
Yep. That's a good analogy. And the whole time, in one of the letters, Myrna says, you stay in your room, you always recount this one bus story, because the bus story is this one somewhat bad experience that he had on a bus, so he'll never get on a bus again. And he tells it to everybody. It's like, that is his, up until that point, that is the most significant event of his life.
Yeah.
Is this bus incident.
It's
But
a Stalingrad.
right. and Myrna in the letter's like, I'm worried about you. If you came to New York, you would flourish, right? And
Yeah.
we kind of, I guess, in a way,